Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel for another Project Zomboid video. In this one, I'm going to be talking over some things I like to try when regular Zomboid playthroughs are getting a little stale. If you've ever played Project Zomboid to the point where you're surviving for weeks on end without much left to do, you're all set for the future and are finding survival under normal circumstances just a little tedious, then this video will hopefully help you spice up your playthroughs through the use of various perks, sandbox settings, and of course, many mods. If you do find the video helpful, be sure to drop it a like and subscribe to the channel. It's what keeps the channel growing and the videos coming. So I want to start off with the easiest thing you can do, which is the sandbox settings. I know many players in Project Zomboid tend to just pick one of the preset options for either survival or apocalypse, and it's a great place to get your first experiences, but I'd always recommend changing some settings and making your own blend of Project Zomboid difficulty settings at some stage. Obviously this sort of thing is down to your personal preference, but I'll go over some of the things that I've tweaked in my settings, and that way you can see where I've changed the game and how it can be used to set up more unique playthroughs. So let's start with loot. Loot settings are pretty self-explanatory, but all the same can be a really powerful tool when it comes to making your Zomboid playthrough more challenging in particular ways. If you're finding that you're gathering everything you'll ever need too easily, especially with things like food items, consider turning down these settings to things like extremely rare. I do this on my default playthroughs, but turn up weapon and ammo spawns a little so I have a more realistic chance of using firearms. Play around with these as you want to, but don't underestimate how this can actually change your experience for a more immersive one. So next we've got zombie behavior and zombie population, and these are a bit more complicated. Zombie behavior is the main one here, which you can tweak more than you might initially think, and with the help of mods you can adjust them even more. You can turn zombies into sprinters, for example, which does just what it says on the tin. You could try this with lower population counts, or with a mod like Fear the Sun, which makes zombies hide during the day and go into a hibernation state once indoors. At night, however, they come outside to hunt. This can create an I Am Legend type scenario, which makes for a really eerie, quiet setup in the day and a terrifying gauntlet at night if you don't make it back home in time. On top of that, it's also possible to change the zombies' intelligence. If you want to give yourself a real challenge, try making it so that zombies can interact with doors. It makes living out in rural areas almost essential unless you can barricade a building efficiently. One thing I like to do for my own playthroughs is to adjust the zombie population start count and the zombie population peak count. In my usual runs, I like to set the zombie peak at between 2 and 4 weeks, starting off with a lower number of zombies and having it gradually climb to the point where it's going to be much more difficult. The idea here is that this will give you time to gear up, but once you are geared, you're going to be met with higher zombie counts, which keeps things from becoming too easy as you continue to play and acquire better loot. You'll be faced with a challenge that matches the gear that you've got. So the last thing I'll touch on when it comes to the sandbox settings is the world itself. If you've ever played a 6-month later run, you'll understand what I mean here. Playing in a Project Zomboid run where the power and water is already switched off really tests you, especially if it's getting to the winter months. You'll have to survive on non-perishable food and whatever you can grow or hunt. If you're the type that likes to hate themselves and play games that make you depressed, you can try the cryogenic winter mod with this setup as well, and it'll make you more upset than when your mother tells you you're a disappointment, which is obviously something I've never experienced. Moving very swiftly away from sandbox settings, we've got some more mods that can act as a complete game changer from your playthroughs. The first one I want to touch on is the expanded helicopter events mod. For me, this mod fits perfectly with almost every type of playthrough that I do. Instead of a single helicopter event that occurs after roughly a week, you'll find several types of helicopter events occurring on a regular basis. You can set how frequent they are and when they end, if at all. Now, I like to keep these events coming through the entirety of my playthrough, but you can expect jets flying overhead that drag zombies in a particular direction, police helicopters complete with voice lines, and even airdrops and helicopter crash sites with various loot and supplies. Seriously, if you haven't tried this one, it makes the helicopter events 10 times more interesting than they already are. Now, I've already done a video on some of the best modded maps that I'd recommend for Project Zomboid players trying out, and I'll leave a little section on the end screen of this video that will take you to that, but I have to mention here that one of the best ways you can keep things interesting for yourself in Project Zomboid is to try other maps. From post-apocalyptic cityscapes to rural France, there are some really amazing maps to choose from. Not to mention that there are some killer maps out there for individual challenges too, like the popular Backrooms map that puts you inside an endless maze of carpeted rooms that look almost identical to one another. Modded maps can change the world around you and make you feel more immersed, or give you spectacular challenges to try and survive. Either way, it's a blast. Obviously, there's also a whole host of firearms and equipment mods out there like Britters, Porlo Loot, and the firearms mods, and these can all serve to make the game a bit more interesting in their own ways. Try out some different item-based mods and see which ones suit you. It's great for trying out new equipment, new vehicles, new uniforms, or just attempting a playthrough where you use guns more frequently. Lastly, I do want to touch on some perks. It's far too easy to stick to one particular build in Project Zomboid that's considered the meta build to get things done in the most efficient way. And yes, whilst this will increase your survival chances, changing your perks can be a really easy way to make things different in your standard runs. Playing with reduced hearing, for example, can make the game that much scarier, and there's even a mod out there that was newly created for playing a blind character where your perspective is zoomed in, your hearing is greatly increased, and your surroundings are grayscaled. It's almost like an ultrasound look. And I'm not saying this is easy, but again, it can provide something incredibly different. So that's it from me in this one, folks, but I hope you found something in here to try in your own runs, and that I've perhaps convinced you to try something new to spice up your Project Zomboid playthroughs. As always, a massive thank you to my growing list of patrons that choose to support the channel. I couldn't do this without any of you guys, so thank you ever so much for that. As always, there's a link in the description if you want to join them. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.